Hi, thank you so much. Thank you so much for having us. My name is Kate. I use she, her pronouns, calling in from Lenape land here on Manhattan. And I'm the artistic producer of Noor Theatre. We are a theater that supports, develops, and produces the work of artists of Middle Eastern and North African descent, also known as Southwest Asian and North African descent. And we're here because we stand in solidarity with the people of Ukraine, with those impacted and displaced by conflict, war, and occupation throughout the world. And we're really grateful to join our colleagues here today. And today we're going to share a couple offerings from some artists. First, we'll be sharing some poetry and a video offering from one of our artists, Noelle Ghoussaini. And following that, Bazeed, who's here with me on the screen, will be sharing some poems by Palestinian poets as well as some of their own work. Bazeed, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm happy to be here with all of you. And I don't know what to say by way of introduction. I'm a poet and a prose writer and a playwright. I'm an Egyptian immigrant slash settler to Turtle Island. And wish the occasion were different, but happy to be in this room with you all.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much. I'd like to start by sharing, Noelle has shared a few words about her piece that she'd like me to share before we watch that. So I'll go ahead and read those, and then we'll jump into her piece. So Noelle says, "How do we cope in moments of atrocity, from Ukraine to Palestine and beyond? How do we stand together as humans, as resilient, vulnerable, and magical spirits amidst unimaginable violence? Violence that sends waves of trauma into the depths of our bones and across time and space, with repercussions for generations to come. I do not have answers. Yet the wisdom of my heart tells me that our creative voices can help heal wounds, help us reimagine new worlds, beautiful possibilities, and reconnect us with our heart and our humanity amidst so much unimaginable loss and pain." And so the video I am sharing tonight turns to the creative voice, a reimagining of the words of the renowned Palestinian poet Mahmoud Darwish through the lens of my father and I as Lebanese people deeply invested in Palestinian liberation. We created this during the separation we encountered during the peak of COVID, while my father was in treatment for throat cancer while I was dealing with a severe injury that led me to temporarily losing my ability to walk, and during the height of the 2020 Black Lives Matter movement in New York City and across the world. The process of creating this video helped us to embody the wisdom, vision, and courage of Darwish as we probe and imagine what liberation looks like. Darwish is a poet whose vision and words are spiritually transcendent, rooting us in the material world while expanding us into the mystical. I often turn to Darwish as a beacon of light, as a spiritual warrior, and as a poet of liberation, particularly when I encounter moments of darkness. And in watching this video tonight, Darwish's poem In Jerusalem becomes yet again devastatingly relevant amidst the violent attack of Israeli police raiding the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound yesterday, as Palestinian worshippers gathered for morning prayer during the holy month of Ramadan. May Darwish's words and poetry serve grieving, resistance, healing, and openings connecting the struggles for freedom and dignity for the peoples of Palestine and Ukraine, and ultimately for the freedom and dignity of all beings everywhere." Again, those words are from Noelle Ghoussaini, the writer and artist whose video I will play now. All right, so just one moment as I share my screen.
في القدس أعني داخل السور القديم أسير من زمن إلى زمن بلا ذكرى تصوبني.
In Jerusalem, and I mean within the ancient walls, I walk from one epoch to another without a memory to guide me. The prophets over there are sharing the history of the holy, ascending to heaven and returning less discouraged and melancholy because love and peace are holy and are coming to town. Hi, Dad.
Good morning, Noelle.
How's it going?
Very good, very good. My voice is bad, but otherwise I'm good.
Okay, good. So I wanted to talk to you about, how during quarantine, you and I have been sharing Darwish poetry. And when you recorded back to me in Arabic, after I sent you that poem in English, I was so moved by that. And I guess I wanted to know a little bit more about Darwish and what he means to you.
I started to read Darwish in the late 60s. Of a crop of Palestinian literary men, he stood out truly as the poet of the Palestinian resistance. كنت أمشي فوق منحدر وأهجس.
I was walking down a slope and I was thinking to myself, how do the narrators disagree over what light said about a stone?
من حجر شحيح الضوء تندلق.
Is it from a dimly lit stone that wars flare up? I walk in my sleep. I stare in my sleep. I see no one behind me. I see no one ahead of me. All of this light is for me. I walk, I become lighter, I fly, I become another, transfigured. Words sprout like grass from Isaiah's messenger mouth. If you don't believe, you won't be safe.
And his poetry was adopted by the armed resistance movement, especially by the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, which had his poems on their posters. As a person that witnessed what was being done to the Palestinians in the Holy Land, and even in the camps, in the Lebanese camps in Beirut, 3-4 miles from where I grew up, it was like a knife in my heart. And I picked it up as a cause and it stayed with me.
I walk as if I were another. And my wound, a white biblical rose, and my hands, 2 doves on the cross, hovering and carrying the earth. I don't walk, I fly. I become another, transfigured. No place and no time. So who am I? I am no I in Ascension's presence. But I think to myself, alone the Prophet Muhammad spoke classical Arabic.
يتكلم العربية الفصحى.
And then what? Then what? A woman soldier shouted.
هو أنت ثانية؟
Is that you again?
ألم أقتلك؟
Didn't I kill you? I said you killed me, but I forgot, like you, to die.
قلت قتلتني ونسيت مثلك أن أموت.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kate.
And now I'll turn it over to Bazeed.
Thank you, Kate, and Noelle in absentia. I'm glad we had this piece. I'm going to read a few poems today. I think as a member of the Arab community, one of the things that's been particularly difficult about this past period is both watching the disaster of the Russian invasion of Ukraine unfolding, and then on top of that, having to have this additional awareness of the language of white supremacy that has dominated the news waves as we all sort of hear it discussed. I'm sure some of us have seen some of this coverage. CBS, for example, says, "This isn't a place, with all due respect, like Iraq or Afghanistan, that has seen conflict raging for decades. You know, this is a relatively civilized, relatively European, I have to choose those words carefully too, city, where you wouldn't expect that or hope that it's going to happen." So I wonder if that's with someone being very careful about the words that they're using, what they would have said if they weren't being very careful. And I've just been thinking a lot about Du Bois talking about the double consciousness of the Black person in America, and sort of seeing how the majority assigns value or doesn't assign value to one's life. So in solidarity with Ukraine, I am going to be reading some poems from Palestine, and also just want to bring into the room that Al-Aqsa Mosque is under attack. This is now an annual event that happens every Ramadan. I am going to start with reading Lina Khalaf Tufaha's poem Running Orders. So this is, the poem starts with an interview, and then the poem will start. So I'm reading from the interview first. What happens before the Israeli military bombs your house? For many Gaza Strip residents, it's a phone call. Sausan Kawera, a resident of Khan Yunis, said she was in the house Tuesday when the phone rang. She answered, and on the other side was David, who claimed he was with the Israeli military. He asked for me by name. He said, "You have women and children in the house, get out. You have 5 minutes before the rockets come," Kawera said in an interview. Lina Khalaf Tufaha writes this poem in response, entitled Running Orders. They call us now, before they drop the bombs. The phone rings and someone who knows my first name calls and says in perfect Arabic, "This is David." And in my stupor of sonic booms and glass-shattering symphonies still smashing around in my head, I think, do I know any Davids in Gaza? They call us now to say, "You have 58 seconds from the end of this message. Your house is next." They think of it as some kind of wartime courtesy. It doesn't matter that there is nowhere to run to. It means nothing that the borders are closed and your papers are worthless and mark you only for a life sentence in this prison by the sea, and the alleyways are narrow and there are more human lives packed one against the other, more than any other place on earth. Just run. We aren't trying to kill you. It doesn't matter that you can't call us back to tell us the people we claim to want aren't in your house, that there's no one here except you and your children who are cheering for Argentina, sharing the last loaf of bread for this week, counting candles left in case the power goes out. It doesn't matter that you have children. You live in the wrong place. And now is your chance to run to nowhere. It doesn't matter that 58 seconds isn't long enough to find your wedding album or your son's favorite blanket. or your daughter's almost completed college application, or your shoes, or to gather everyone in the house. It doesn't matter what you had planned. It doesn't matter who you are. Prove you're human. Prove you stand on two legs. Run. So that was Running Orders by Lina Khalaf Tufaha. And now I'm going to read a couple of poems by Asma Azaiza. This one is called Things Sleeping. It is translated by Maryam Hijjawi. Look at me, mother. I'm back with more meat and bones and wisdom. These days I can think of death, can sleep without being lulled. My milk teeth now grind my losses. I come back to find tongues of lullabies severed, children bellowing in every corner, and the muezzin's call stifled by a strange hand. Return is a movie screen, and I no longer recognize the lead. Though she's only come in once, she's tampered with the script 1,000 times. Return is a cat who ate its young. Return is my braid which I cut off and fed to time. The once green garden is now a woman afraid of old age, the well a bed in a hospital, and cats are the souls of women who cried on my arm. And I am now your mother. I shield your body with my own from the bullet that your 70 years will suddenly release. The accent I once rode now rests beneath the earth. What happened to the shifting qaf and the kaf that barely came out? Where is the sling and the bird? Where is the neighbor's boy? What was his name? And what was mine? If I'd only had a single name, I wouldn't have forgotten it. It would have struck me right on the head like a sniper's bullet. Where are the skins I cured with life's salt? Where are the supplies for the war that never came? They were devoured by waiting and might. Where is that northern gate that opens out onto happiness? Where is my Uncle Mahmoud, who used to eat grass and ask God to forgive humanity's sins? My old father, who became my son, is dead. But where is the young man who was once my father? Where is that body I used to climb, from whose forehead I picked the sour fruits of time? Tell him that all the teachings of politics have rotted in my head and that I've replaced them with poems I do not understand. I wanted to repair the verses, but ruined them instead. My mother put a finger to her mouth, signaled me to keep quiet. She pointed at the piles of things sleeping. And now the last thing I'll read is a poem of mine. I wrote it in response to a video that I saw in October 2021 that was documenting Israeli soldiers savaging a Palestinian mother who was trying to protect her son's gravesite that was being demolished to make way for a children's theme park. So this is from October 2021. Like hummus. First, they send in the girl soldiers. They look better. No, not the soldiers themselves, I mean, no, the optics. Then sending even a tiny battalion of boy soldiers to peel the old woman off her son's grave. Ruth Eglash, writing for the Washington Post, has an article on the rise in the Israeli army of voluntary Orthodox girl recruits. If you hover over her name, Ruth Eglash, a hopeful little box comes up. It tells you Ruth is a reporter covering for Israel and the Palestinian territories. In other words, colonialism's her beat. Because that's part of how you steal a country, don't you know? Right from under its indigenous inhabitants' feet, proper nouns turned adjective. Israel as Israel is a nation state. Palestine as territories, pile of black caviar on a plate ready for eating. Have you ever been to territories in the summer? I hear it's lovely that time of year. Keep up with that kind of thing and you'd very likely stand to win the very hummus out of the bowl with its traditional blue and white flower motif. But anyway, this isn't a poem about hummus. It's a poem about the old woman. It took an army of them to peel off her son's headstone, the better to make way for a Flintstones ride in the theme park planned in its place, whose building plans she alone, surrounded by bulldozers and guns, was delaying manifest on the holy, holy land of proper noun nation state. Another article kind of about the same thing shows a photo courtesy of the Israeli Defense Forces, as proper noun nation state doth consistently, methinks, protest too much. Shows a girl crowned in orange sparks haloing her face, a girl from a mixed gender combat unit using machinery to reach missing people under the rubble. Dina Kraft with a K, correspondent on Twitter at Dina Kraft, coming at you all the way from Lod in proper noun nation state, begins her reportage this way. Rain is pouring down and the soldiers in helmets and neon orange rescue vests are covered in mud. But the search for the missing under the massive piles of rubble continues for the third straight sleepless day. It takes Dina Kraft with a K till about the third paragraph for her to craft this sentence. The missing people the soldiers are trying to rescue are plastic dolls. And the scenario of proper noun nation state being under nationwide missile attack, only a drill. Now, if you already know anything about the Ilid is to load as hummus is to hummus, you'll know it was taken not just with the miracle of words sublimated into colonial strategy, but a proper noun massacre. Miracle, mission, possible, accomplished in a mosque. But this isn't a poem about hummus or plastic dolls or mosque massacres or people shot dead in their hundreds praying an entire village in insert territory name. It's a poem about the old woman. It took an army of them to peel off her son's gravestone, to raise the way for God's chosen proper noun children to play. It's a well-known fact about people from territories that the mothers, having too many of them like sows, just don't care about their kids. According to what the settler townies from Crown Heights, Brooklyn have to tell you, a common rhetoric among proper noun subjects of proper noun nation state. Why else do they send them off to Hamas then? Why? Why else valorize their lifting stone against tank, baby face's eye level with the tread? Why do so many ululate like it's a wedding when their daughters and sons return to them as stillness, as future soil for olive harvest, as future soil for trees? Trees so ancient and deeply rooted, they transmogrify loose earth into ground. There's a book everybody read that I never did, all about trees. How they speak a secret language, how scaled to the eye of God, they are as interconnected as mycelium. Another article I half read one time said that if you approach a plant with even just the intention of cutting, it releases a stress hormone detectable in the lungs of its leaves. The thing about life is it gives you about 1 million metaphors. Feast on a platter big as the world. It's cheating, really. A poet barely even has to look. Because now I could say this poem is about how the olive trees in Palestine have been communing with one another in the language of centuries. That they are older than the Washington Post. That they know and remember the name of the soil that fixes them. Remembrance is nitrogen and phosphate nourishment through the earth. Or I could say that this poem is about witness. That bark and branches bristle with eyes from the river to the sea. Or I could say this poem is about a people so unbelievably lost and lonely in the desert, they'll spend 3 days unearthing humanoid plastic, all of it without sleep. But this isn't a poem about humanoid plastic. I'm actually going to have to stop there because I ran out of time. Thank you all very much.
Well, listen, thank you both, Kate and Bazeed. And I think this is a very, very important point Bazeed also brought up, the ranking, of human lives, when Syria got attacked. For example, I think America took in 3,000 people. I think Germany, others, 1 million. But Ukraine is 100,000. They're like good refugees and bad refugees. Hungary, that, was fighting dogs and nails against anyone who came, from the Arab world, all of a sudden said, no, Ukrainians can come. Or Poland, the same. 1 million people enter. So what is that? Isn't a refugee? A refugee isn't injustice. Injustice isn't violence. Violence against anyone. And what we heard through the day from the African American community said, we know what's happening there. We know the violence. We know the taking away of a home and what it means to have no home, to be displaced, to be taken away from your country. The Asian American community who also said, we know violence we're actually experiencing right now. It went up 300% in the Trump time because they were pointed out as supposedly the carrier of COVID. And then from the Palestinian experience, of violence and displacement and tanks and all of it. So it's really, really clear that what happened, especially in this theater where 300 people died seeking refuge. Many children, we just heard today from one of the actresses who happened to be in there after her home was bombed. It wasn't safe in there. She had to flee again. It is shocking what is happening, and I think there should be a planetary reaction as the racism is a planetary problem, the environment, the climate change, homophobia, and also injustices like these more. And I hope we will see a better future. And art has to be on the side of life. Art is on this right side of justice. And I really want to thank you, Kate and Bazeed, for sharing. And of course, also from Noelle, that strong contribution of speaking to her elder of the community. We have to go right away to our next segment. Maybe stay a second and say hello to a new group that formed, the Ukrainian Actors of New York, who are with us. No, it's the Mabu Minds. I'm sorry, it's the Mabu Minds and Performance Space who are with us. And we're going to have, if it all worked out, Carl Hancock's Rock with us and Maud Mitchell so I hope we got that right. So thank you all for your contribution, and we move on. And I see Sharon here from the Mabu Minds with us. Let's move on and to our next segment. And goodbye, Kate. Thank you for preparing this, Bazeed, for talking to us and for preparing that beautiful